Hey everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Bar podcast. I'm your host, Denise Satova, and today I have the pleasure to introduce you and chat with one of the most fascinating people in a world of business, creativity, and innovation, Chris Doe. Chris, I would say he's celebrated for revolutionizing branding, design, and education. He went from humble beginnings to becoming this inspiration to people all over the world, almost like changing perspectives on blending creativity and business. Unheard of for me until I heard him, and branding, storytelling. He is an Emmy winning creative director, CEO, and chief strategist of Blind and the founder of The Future with over 2 million subscribers, 200 million views on YouTube. And he has set out with a bold mission to help 1 billion people earn a living doing what they love. So let me tell you, I've been following Chris for months now on YouTube, soaking up all of his educational content. And really it resonated with me. It hit me because he's not just another guy with veins popping out of his neck, screaming empty motivational crap. That's just a noise for me. To me, it's show me the badge that you've done it, and ideally come from some humble beginning or overcame some type of adversity, kept going, have this insatiable appetite of curiosity and growth. And now you're able to share it with the world in a simple to understand way. And he's very transparent. He also has this unique style. He totally owns himself. He doesn't give a hoot about what the world thinks of him. He has a healthy dose of self-love and self-respect, and he's funny as shit without trying to be funny. And there's nothing forced or fake. It all seems to flow seamlessly. So I cannot wait to dive in. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Denise. I was just thinking maybe you should just do the show without me. I'll just sit here and listen to you the whole time.
Listen, I don't do this with just about anybody, but I have been watching you and listening to you intently because I do not get easily impressed. And it sounds weird. I'm not some sort of a stalker. I just can't get enough of the content and the ease at which you deliver it. So let's dive into your story. So you describe yourself as a loud introvert. What are you saying to the world about yourself, your thought process, and why and how do you believe it is helpful to come up with like a two-word description of your brand?
Okay. First, I'll answer this question in the way that you asked it. What is it that I want people to know about me being a loud introvert? It's that I want to dispel this idea or this myth that introverts aren't allowed to play in the social space, that they can't be thought leaders, they can't be the main person on the stage. And it's a reaction or an explanation I had to give to some of my former students who couldn't believe that I struggle with public speaking because they can see me in a dynamic way, very engaging in the classroom, doing crazy stuff as teachers are prone to do. But then outside, like when I had to give a talk, I was just a nervous wreck. I needed to explain that to them. Until you actually see me struggle, you kind of don't believe it. But what I found that it's really neat when other introverts raise their hand and say, "You inspire me. You give me permission to take up a little bit more space, to be brave, and to see you struggling, and then getting on that stage and doing what it is that you do gives me a lot of hope for myself." The reason why the two-word brand, as I refer to it, is important is because our stories are complex. We're complicated people. We have oftentimes this ability to overwhelm people with too much information, and it makes it really hard for them to walk away with a clear picture of who we are, especially at a distance. So we can reduce who we are into something that's like bite-sized, that's memorable, or as my former business coach would say, a repeatable story. Then that provokes curiosity. It allows people to tell other people, hey, you got to meet this guy. And as you've demonstrated, having a clear two-word brand or a mission statement allows the conversation to happen when you're not in the room, which is you helping them along the branding process.
You're right. It is curiosity provoking. It's a great conversation starter, and I love both descriptions. And again, saying what I said earlier, and I truly meant it, is it hit me hard because I was trying to figure out my story. Kind of, I took the inventory of historical events, and who am I, and why is it that when I go to these networking events, I feel drained? But I love to connect with people. Certain people drain me, certain people charge me. And then I also like to disrupt when I see something that's not working. So when I heard you combine, you're a loud introvert because you, in a sense, are disrupting or have disrupted the process, the whole notion of combining creativity and business. That's that's ballsy. That's
Mm,
disruptive.
mm. Stanford has this school called the D School, like the design school for business people. I think it's a graduate program. And I thought, that's pretty cool that business people get to dabble in creativity, the dark arts, if you will. But there is no B school for creatives. So there's a D
Mm.
school for business, but we need to do the opposite. And I think personally, it's easier to teach creative people left brain ideas and principles than it is probably to teach left brainers the creative aspect. Like I'll take my older brother as the prime example. He's a graduate of Stanford, and he is a software engineer, a developer, and he thinks in binary space. So oftentimes when he's not sure about how to decorate his home or his own personal style or aesthetics, he's going to call me and say, "Hey, I don't know what I'm looking at here. I need your guidance." And he pulls me in. But I don't want to be like the kids on the other side that are looking through the window and having that kind of feeling of envy or jealousy, like, gosh, how come we can't play? So I want to bring the business principles that I've learned in the last 2 decades of running a business and teaching creative people. Hey, if you got some of this stuff together, you're going to be more successful. You're going to be more joyful in what it is that you do, and you're going to take away some of that stress that you feel around running a creative business.
How has that been working for you? Teaching that aspect to them, the aspect of business.
Man, you get right to it. It is a
Oh, yeah.
lot harder than you would think. It's like, shoot, creative people, the thing that make them great also make them terrible business people. They're divergent thinkers. They think that there's more than one way to solve a problem. And so by that very nature, they are hard to teach. And I had the same problem when I was teaching at Art Center, uh, where my students, I would say, like, here's the framework, here are the boundaries, here's the example, and here's the outcome. They would go off the reservation, if you will, and come back with the strangest things. I was like, why would you do that? Well, I had to do it my way. I had to explore it and find out it didn't work before I would listen to you. So we would have 14 weeks to go over assignments over and over again. Sometimes towards the 12th or the 13th week, they would say, "Oh, you know that thing you told us in on week 2? I finally got it." And I don't have hair, but I'm like pulling my hair out. Like, what are you guys talking about? Why would you
Oh
do
my
this to
goodness.
yourself? This is insane to me. I'm telling you, this is how you get to the result faster, but they just don't see it that way. And so they're very difficult to teach.
That's interesting. Do you think that has anything to do with well, let me back up. You often speak about like disproving commonly held personal beliefs, in order to break through your limiting beliefs. Do you think that has something to do with that?
It has a lot to do with it for sure. I think after going at this for 10 plus years now, teaching on social platforms, I've come to the realization that people don't need more information. They don't need more tools or frameworks. They think they do, and they will pay for that. But what they really need help with, and it's hard for me to say this in a open forum, which is I think they need therapy. They need to
Yeah.
work on their own limiting beliefs, their mindset, and to have a mind shift in order for them to be able to use the tools. Because all I do is lay out the tools, the techniques, and I still can't figure out why they won't take that first necessary step. A lot of creative people have an unhealthy relationship with money. Money is
Mm.
the root of all evil. Money cheapens the creative process. I'm not worth this, or how can I charge that much? Or this is unethical for me to be able to ask for this kind of money. It just feels dirty and wrong. So how do you run a business when you have an unhealthy relationship with money? That's a
Yeah.
difficult thing to overcome.
Yeah, in addition to that, I think it's we assign different values to money. right? It's the money messages from our childhood too. So it means different things. Sometimes it's avoiding different things, different feelings. And I think that's problematic. One of I don't know if you're familiar with the teachings of Michael Singer, uh, sort of this my sort of a spiritual OG, if you will. And he says, listen, energy, there's only one energy. Whether you express in love or anger or hate, it all comes, it's one energy, but it's the perceptions that we bring, the preferences, right? So what essentially looking at it logically by disproving it, I love that as a tool. It's almost like you're having this argument with yourself, but there has to be the willingness to do it, and I've observed people come to your masterminds classes, which are packed with information. I mean, you are revealing the next steps to essentially take your business to a whole new level. Yet it's like, you come home, you got this, you're full of this rah-rah, and then the noise stops, and you're all on your own with your thoughts and your limiting beliefs. So it's like you said, it's like, doing the work on your mindset. That's the tough part.
Yeah, and I wish I could just title the workshop "How to Unlock Your Limiting Beliefs," but I think no one will show up because no one believes they have limiting beliefs, and that's why I kind of have to trick them. The Trojan horse is, "Oh, I'll teach you how to like have a sales conversation, how to price your projects." But before we do that, once they're in the class, I'm like, "Okay, I had to give you the bait, so you would show up and do this work with me, and here's the problem, and we'll go through it in a Socratic way and help them to unpack these very complex, tightly held beliefs."
Yeah. What was yours? What was a tough one for you to let go?
Oh, shoot. I think I held on to a lot of different on old ideas that didn't serve me. Up until about 18 years old, there was a pattern of self-talk that wasn't terribly helpful or supportive. And that one was about how I shouldn't take up space and my desires to be invisible because people don't accept me, people won't like me, and I struggled through a lot of that. And I also was just struggling to find a business that would work for me. I failed at doing lots of things trying to make money, and it wasn't until I found graphic design that I started to figure out what I could hang my identity on. And so I became obsessed with design. I did everything I could to consume it, to live it, to eat it, to sleep it. And I started to find a skill that I could exhibit in a way that was relatively easy for me, that didn't require too much effort, that got really good results. And so I started to rebuild myself in that space. I started telling myself a different story, one of love and one of support and kindness and generosity, one that's full of grace for myself.
I imagine that was a process, right? Not just I'm telling myself the story, and it was an instant sort of transformation. I imagine it hurt a little bit, and you reminding yourself over and over. Um,
I have a strange way of looking at the world. I'll share with you, and it might sound unbelievable to some of your guests or to some of your audience, which is I was 18 years old. I was living in San Diego with my older brother and his girlfriend who didn't like me very much. It was the first time I spent any real time away from home, and I was going through a really rough patch with my girlfriend at that time, the person I fell in love with. And we got into a really bad point in which we're breaking up. I found out that she had not been telling me the truth. I suspected she was cheating on me or at least seeing other people, and it just really tore me up. And at the same time, I had this thing where like I was alienating my relationships with my family, with my parents. Well, I had told since I didn't do well in high school, relatively speaking, this was my kind of second chance to focus on college and build up my portfolio so I could go to art school. And they were feeling like really disappointed, rightfully so, by the way. And then my brother, who had made me this generous offer, like, "Hey, come live with me. I'm preparing for grad school. You can get away from the parents and figure out who you are." And I effed up that relationship too. So now it seems like everybody in the world hated me or didn't like me or were annoyed or disappointed in me. And then I guess it kind of broke me. And I had that long night of of the soul, the long dark night, when I remember laying on the futon just at 2 in the morning, just crying my eyes out, just thinking
mm,
like, first you go through all the stages of grief, right? Of grieving, which is like, this sucks, they're terrible, I'm so angry. and then self-pity, and you just go through the whole process. And I have to tell you, Nisa, I had a lot of dark thoughts. Like, I didn't think life was worth living anymore. And I went through this very intense emotional rock bottom. Like, I hit that bottom for me. And a lot of people listening to this would say, that isn't so bad, man. People have it much worse. But I have a way of catastrophizing an emotion, taking it to its logical extreme. So that gives me clarity on what to do next. So I experience, I would describe it to people as an out of body experience where I could float above myself, seeing myself laying in a fetal position on the futon, observing myself and saying, like, what happened to you? This is not the person you promised yourself that you would become one day. And you're pathetic, you're a loser, and you deserve all the bad things to you. Now you have to make a decision. Is this who you want to be for the rest of your life, or do you want to be somebody different? And I use that kind of pit of despair to reconstruct myself. And then the next morning I woke up, and it started out, and I'll just be honest with you, as like angry. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna
Mm,
prove them wrong. I
wow.
just had that mindset. I'm gonna prove them wrong. I'm gonna prove to my ex-girlfriend that she was wrong for like not being faithful to me and giving up on a relationship. I'm gonna prove my brother wrong or right in that he gave me the opportunity, but it wasn't wasted. I'm gonna make something of myself. I'm gonna prove my mom and dad wrong that, despite not doing well in high school, I'm committed to doing well now, and moving forward, I will succeed despite no one believing in me or helping me. And from that day forward, so it was a 24-hour period, I just became a whole new person. And I tell people that's the day the child died and the man was born.
Wow. That is a story of true transformation. And to have that clarity, do you think that it made sense back then? Do you think that was a little bit of like, F you, I'm going to show you. And then that part of the, sort of the pursuit to build something and, that energy was like, I'm going to show you. And then at some point it transformed into like a true authentic passion.
Yeah, it happened pretty quickly. So I woke up that morning and said, you know what? They're right. I have wasted this opportunity. I've taken advantage of things, or I've taken it for granted that all these things are laid out for me. And what do I have to complain about? So that day I started to focus on my education, started working on my portfolio. I sought mentors who were going to guide me through the process of creating my portfolio. And it's really cool. And you know this. Let's say you want to lose weight and you want to be fit. You throw all the processed foods away. You actually start your walk, and it's not a run, it's just a walk, and you can feel pretty good and accomplished. Like, you know what? I am the result of the decisions that I make. So I need to make smart decisions. And as soon as I make smart decisions, the results feel pretty freaking good. And it can be quite addictive. So I'm in there like, okay, I'm doing work. I'm not waiting till last minute anymore. I'm in the library. I'm not watching TV anymore. I'm going to just focus on building my portfolio. And that level of intense focus started to tell me a new story, a new self talk, which is if you're focused, you do the work, and you put in that effort, you will see results. And almost immediately, I think my classmates and my teachers noticed something happen. And I didn't want to tell them the whole dark night of the soul thing. I'm focused now. I'm ready. And what was real interesting is the people who were rooting for you all this time, they were there. But now they're like yelling really loudly, like, what do you need? How can I help you? What else can we do? And so classmates, TAs, professors, were starting to rally around to help me. And there's this idea, I don't know if you're aware of it, but uh, most people are familiar with paranoia, but most people are not familiar with pronoia. Sounds strange. And it was something that was invented, I think, in the 80s or the 70s, where instead of believing that everyone conspires to tear you down and take you apart, pronoia is the same concept that everyone conspires to help you, to support you, to lift you up, to make sure you
Mm.
succeed. So I flipped from like one really bad emotion to one really positive emotion, and I've been riding that train ever since.
I have to pause here right now because I literally have goosebumps. This is so, it's very powerful. And I love, love, love that you're focused on that you describe people rallying around you to build you up, because I think that is such a powerful story, and I love this because I think that we are sort of a pre-programmed to fight, right? To just to resist and focus on what's not working. And I made a decision to not do that. And so that is wonderful. That is like so powerful. Um, wow. What so so why? Okay, so why is it important for you to teach 1 billion people how to make a living doing what they love?
I'll tell you something. I'm a child of the 80s and I watched this show called, I think it's called 20 something. And it was a TV show and it was about these young advertising execs and they lived this really cool, interesting lifestyle. And and I didn't know at that time, but they were doing everything I thought I wanted to do. I just didn't think advertising was the vehicle to do it. They were charismatic. They were coming up with creative things. They had a cool office and they were just like living in a very exciting life. And I think I remember saying to myself, like, one day I'm gonna have a studio on the beach. I'm gonna play volleyball. I'm gonna do whatever these guys are doing. Excuse me. I'm gonna do whatever these guys are doing in my own way. Fast forward a couple of years later, I finished school at the Art Center College of Design in Pasadena. I'm living in LA. I moved to Venice Beach, place I've never
Mm,
been to before, and I'm a block and a half from the sand, living this life. And every time something wonderful happens to me, I have a genuine like pinch me moment where I'm thinking, is this really my life? Because if you ask the 17, 18-year-old version of me, what do you think in your wildest dreams, where you would be, what you would be doing, and what your life would look like? I could not describe to you the kind of life I live on a daily basis. And I live with tremendous amount of gratitude. And I'm a first generation immigrant. My parents and my family are refugees from Vietnam. So to kind of live where we live, to do the things that we do, to talk to the kinds of people that we get to talk to, it's a blessing every single day. And so I've been able to achieve more than ever dreamt possible as part of that kind of American dream. That I think that road to me was built on education, built on the generosity of strangers, sometimes friends, guiding me along the way. And now I feel an incredible debt and obligation to pay it forward to help others along their journey for whoever is interested. And that's why I believe education is such a transformative vehicle. Unfortunately, our education system in America has let most of us down. It's not serving people. I think it's serving banks.
mm. Again, I'm like just taking it in. Edu you giving back. You giving back, you lifting others. I mean, there's a reason why you and I are talking, and talking about education, there's something comforting. Like, I'm also first generation immigrant. I came to this country, I think it was like 17 by myself. And there was a period of time when I was homeless. And I remember you had to leave the homeless shelter from the morning, come back at night. And I used to go to library because it gave me, it was like a solace. It was a piece of calm, the books. And I had a dream. I had a dream that I'll get American education and have a business and be able to give others, and it all unfolded. So it can definitely happen. So this is great. I know you love comic books. You revealed it. That's not a secret. And I'm curious, if you could design your own comic book and a superhero through your own lens, what would that look like?
The kind of characters I'm most drawn to are characters that are not the anti-hero, but atypical. They have a lot of problems and they're working through. And there's a conversation that Stan Lee shared about the origin of Spider-Man and how he created this character. He said he had this idea for a character who had lots of real problems. So he wanted to make his hero, at that time, a radical idea, a teenager. And he tells a story that his publisher editor says, Stan, you can't make teenagers heroes. They could only be sidekicks. There was some unwritten rule. He goes, okay, what I wanted to have problems. So Peter Parker, to me, is such an endearing character because he's just trying to do the right thing, but everything around him doesn't allow him to do that. He has a job as a photographer for a newspaper where the boss, J. Jonah Jameson, hates him and he hates his alter ego Spider-Man. and he's just trying to keep his identity secret from his Aunt May. So he's always within inches of being discovered by all his villains, by his loved ones, and he's constantly late to dinner or an important event for his girlfriend because he's got to stop some burglary or he's got to stop some crime that's happening. He always chooses to help other people before helping himself. Because
Mm.
as you know, there's this very famous line, with great power comes great responsibility. Because there
Yeah.
was a time in Peter's life where he used his power for self gain and not for good. And it cost him the life of his dear Uncle Ben. He could have stopped a robber who then wound up killing his uncle. And so he lives
Mm.
with this horrendous amount of guilt and this burden that he will always do the right thing. So for me, a modern character as a comic book person would be someone who's on the outside, either an immigrant or someone who's undersized or oversized, someone who doesn't fit into that normal cast of characters, who is kind of often overlooked or just is an outcast, receives some kind of power. And the power is just one special gift. I think the mistake that, say, DC Comics have is they imbue their characters with too much power: magic lassos, invincibility, super strength, invisible jets, a cape, heat vision. It's just too much. Just to have one ability. For example, if you could just move 2 times faster than normal people, that'd be pretty cool power. If you can remember 50% more than normal people, that'd be an interesting power. Or if you could read faces in a way that transmits that energy, and you can say, "Oh, Denise is telling the truth," or "Denise is lying right now," or "She's hiding something." I think that
Yeah.
would be really cool.
That's really cool. Yeah. No, don't look at me too closely. Oh, what was it? I was thinking about Jim Rohn. What did he say? He says, "Listen to
Yes.
me carefully. Don't look at me too close. Don't watch me too closely."
Mm.
Yeah, that's um what about pet peeve? Do you have any pet peeves?
Maybe the one where, like, where people kind of commit to being not capable. Like they have this
Mm.
idea or this mindset that they can't do anything. Usually I don't argue with them because I'm like, well, if you can't do it, you can't do it. Because
Mm.
you have to first believe that you can do it for you to have a shot at achieving something. So people use very kind of subconscious, violent language against themselves. They're like, oh, that's not for me. I could never do that. I can never be that successful, that famous, that clear. And so they've resigned themselves. They're kind of committing to some kind of fatalism that it's not fated for me to be this person. And I think, you know what? You could be anything you want to be. You just decided you don't want to be that. So you have to come to grips with that reality as opposed to saying, well, it's not in the cards for me.
You have do you have children? You have one or two?
Two boys.
You have two boys. How would they
Yeah.
describe you?
It depends on which boy. I have a 20-year-old and a 17-year-old. My 20-year-old to describe me as really hardworking, focused, fair-minded, even-keeled, objective, maybe slightly cool or cold in terms of my emotional center. My
Mm.
youngest would describe me as a fun-loving dad who allows him to be whoever he wants to be. We have a slightly different relationship. So he doesn't see me as the boss or the authority figure, and he's 17 years old. He still gives me like 20, 30-second long hugs when he comes to see me.
Uh,
Yeah. Both are true,
wow.
by the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would imagine that what you were describing earlier is that's the kind of conversations that you would have with your boys to prepare them for the realities of the world with this constant comparison. Um, what are what are some of the impactful conversations?
With my children,
Hmm.
I believe in this way of raising children that some people are going to have difficulty with, in that most parents try to correct their mistakes through their children. They're living vicariously through them. They say, well, go to school, get a good education. You know why? Because I dropped out. Or don't marry this person because they got married too young. Or they'll just say whatever. And so it's kind of weird that you didn't do it, but you're trying to get your children to do something that they have yet to experience themselves. And so I find it to be really odd. My style of parenting is more laissez-faire. Hands off. Everybody gets to do what they want. If you want to go to school, if you want to be rich or poor, that's entirely up to you. I want you to find your thing, whatever that thing is. And I don't care how weird or crazy it is or how long it takes you to find. I have some guardrails. And the guardrails are don't hurt people, don't do things that are inconsistent with your personal values,
Mm.
and don't hurt yourself. Outside of that, do whatever it is that you want. And I had a crazy conversation with my son one day. I think he was 7 or 8 years old, and it was pretty traumatic for him. We were walking outside of the art store because we had just picked up some art supplies, something we do often. And there was a homeless lady, and she was laying on the floor with a
Mm.
blanket over herself, uh, either sleeping or just laying there. And her hands, or at least one of her hands, was open on her belly, just like with a hand up. I was thinking, oh, she was asking for anyone who would give her some change. So I reach in my pocket feeling not so great about this. We have lots. We're buying art and art supplies. And here she is cold on the street with a blanket with her hand out. So I reach in, I put some money in her hand. And then she is like startled and is angry at me. She's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Like, I don't want your blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. It's my bad." And my kids were shocked and scared. They were
Mm.
looking at this as a good deed, and then all of a sudden I'm getting yelled at. So they ran behind me and we kind of left, and I could feel that the nerves and the tension that they felt. We get in the car, and my youngest boy, he's like, "Dad, why why would she yell at you? Doesn't she need money?" I said, "Son, it is my fault. It is my mistake. I did something when somebody didn't ask for it. That's mistake number one.
Wow.
I used my own worldview and made assumptions, and that's not good. People have
Mm.
pride.
Mm.
By giving them money, maybe I insulted her, and that's fair. Number two, not everybody who's homeless is there by choice. It's not because they live in abject poverty. Some of them struggle with mental health issues, some of them struggle
Yeah.
with drug abuse, all kinds of things. So we don't know what she was doing. I just made an assumption. And then I could feel like, okay, everybody's like, whew, thanks for explaining that, Dad. He goes, whew, lucky I won't be homeless.
Oh,
And
wow.
I turned to him and I said, "What makes you say that?" He said, "Well, I'll just live with you and mom forever if that happens, right?" I'm like, "No, boy, we will support you. We'll get you to college. We'll
Yeah.
financially support your education. But outside of that, you get to decide who you want to be in this world." And I could just
Mm.
see the look of terror in his face, which is, oh my gosh, my decisions have consequences. I don't have
Yeah.
an infinite parachute or a lifeline that I could always pull on.
Mm.
I needed him to know that you get to decide what kind of life you want to live, good or bad, wealthy or poor, up to you.
That is powerful, and I think extremely helpful, because, I actually agree with some of what you said about just letting kids sort of, uh, be who they want to be and guiding them, but not living them and, like, personally. You take everything personally. Okay, you got a bad grade. You were caught with, pot in your locker. What is it? What are people gonna think? Why are you doing this to me? Um, it's not about you as a parent. That's my view. And let them and get up, and they become stronger as a result of that, and talking to them and not at them. And I love it. I love that. That's great. Well, Chris, this all means one thing is you'll have to come back. So, Chris, you had the final thought about parenting?
I did. I don't want people to think I'm an absentee or negligent father, just shirking all of my responsibilities. I do want to say this. Matthias, my youngest, he was like, he had low self esteem. He was really shy. He was always very demure around other people. And so I had to help him. Otto, my oldest, he was full of self confidence and the life of the party, so to speak. So every night that I would go and we would do bedtime stuff, I would slip into his bed and I'd sit next to him as he's drifting off into la la land. I would say things in like whisper things into his ears. And I would say something like, "I love you no matter what you do in your life, no matter who you become. I will always love you. And this will never, ever go away. It doesn't matter if you're rich, famous, powerful, or silly. I'll always be there. It doesn't even matter if you commit a crime or you become the world's most hated person. one person who will always love you is me, and I will always be there for you. And I would just repeat that nonstop every single night. And just to make sure he knew that despite sometimes us being very hands off, that it wasn't because we were neglecting, it was because we wanted to give them space to figure out who they were. And I'm very proud of both my boys. My oldest goes to Columbia. He's studying writing and philosophy, and my youngest is just got into art school, and so he's going to pursue his love for art and design.
So you're encouraging them, giving them the space, and but providing that secure feeling that's unconditional,
Yes.
knowing that they will always be loved.
Yeah, so they can explore. So I think a lot of
Yeah.
people don't make decisions because they're afraid of what other people will think. I wanted to remove at least one barrier to his sense of exploration or his curiosity. It won't be from me that you have to worry, like, am I doing what dad wants me to do? Because all I want you to do is do what you want to do. So as long as you're true in alignment with yourself, I'm good. And there's only one incident where I had to kind of veto him in one of the decisions he made because he wasn't thinking clearly. And to this day, he's very grateful that I exerted a little bit more control than I normally do. And that's because it was a decision which high school he was supposed to go to. And at one hand, he could have chosen to go to school with some of his best friends, or he can choose to go to a specialty art high school. It turns out, I think it's one of the top art high schools in the nation as a specialty school. And at first he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna lose all my friends, Dad. This is weird. It's different. I don't know." And then after just a few weeks into school, hearing his friends complain about the school they went to, which is like a Christian school, and in a private Christian school, like, "Oh my gosh, I wish I could do what you're doing." And he's like, "Oh, gee, Dad, thanks." Like holding onto my arm, like, "You helped me save me from myself." Those are only a few times I've seen this mistake before. I'm gonna prevent you. I'm not going to say absolutely you cannot go, but I'm going to strongly encourage it. Seriously consider what I'm saying because I'm going to save you from some pain.
Mhm. That's a great advice. Wow. And you're speaking with him in a respectful way. Um, and it doesn't sound like you're projecting anything. It's simply I'm giving you information. I may have I may see something you're not seeing yet, but I'm honoring and hearing everything you're saying. That's really powerful and practical. Yeah. Wow, Chris, this has been really, really joyful and thank you so much for coming on the show and really bringing it all home in terms of really what it is to staying true to yourself and being yourself, like well anchored in yourself and asking questions, listening, staying curious, learning, growing, and doing. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for asking the questions.
Yeah. And to our viewers and listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. If you're inspired by Chris, his story, I strongly encourage you to follow him. And we have the links below. And do not forget to subscribe to our Beyond the Bar podcast. Follow us on all social media links. And until next time, stay inspired and stay curious.